The radar screen was the first thing that mattered, and it was the last thing that mattered, and everything in between was a fight to keep it honest. At 7:44 in the morning, on the 6th day of the blockade, a single return bloomed on the Abraham Lincoln's air surge display, low and slow, then a second return, then a third, until 50 separate tracks were climbing off the Iranian coastline in a loose, unhurried spread. Subsonic, propeller-driven, the unmistakable signature of the Shahed 136, the same cheap flying bomb the carrier's air defense net had been swatting down for 49 consecutive days. The Combat Information Center sorted all 50 tracks in under 8 seconds and started building intercept solutions with the kind of fluent, unhurried competence that only comes from doing something so many times it stops feeling like danger and starts feeling like routine. That routine was exactly what the other side was counting on. What nobody in the Combat Information Center stopped to ask in those first call minutes was why 50 drones would fly in a loose scatter instead of a tight, coordinated mass. Why they were arriving on irregular timing instead of all at once. Why each one crossed the horizon on a slightly different bearing than the one before it, as though somebody on the other end had assigned each airframe its own individual approach path instead of a shared one. The formation didn't look like an attack, it looked like a survey, and it was one. Iran had not sent 50 drones to sink an aircraft carrier. Iran had sent 50 drones to learn, in granular detail, exactly how the Abraham Lincoln killed drones, and to radio that knowledge home before each airframe died, so that the next 150 drones, already sitting fueled and armed on the rails, would launch with a finished map of every seam in the ship's defenses. Chief Petty Officer Sarah Cole understood what she was looking at by the third drone. Cole ran electronic warfare analysis aboard the Abraham Lincoln, a job she'd held for 14 months, and in 14 months, the last 49 days of them spent in continuous combat, she had built a specific instinct for the moment an Iranian weapon did something it wasn't built to do. A Shahed 136 has no data link hardware in its standard build. It's a one-way weapon, autonomous the second it leaves the rail, with no transmitter at all, because a transmitter costs weight and money on a machine whose entire purpose is being cheap enough to lose by the hundred. So when the track designated Sierra 3 sent out a burst transmission 0.6 of a second long, on a frequency Cole didn't recognize, roughly 2 seconds before an interceptor missile put it in the water at 4 1/10 nautical miles, that shouldn't have happened at all. The burst wasn't a broadcast, it was aimed straight back at the Iranian coast, at something specific, something listening. Cole logged it and kept her eyes on the screen because one strange signal was interesting and a pattern was something else entirely. Sierra 7 transmitted at 7:48 and 31 seconds, same frequency, same burst length, same bearing home, 1 8/10 of a second before its interceptor arrived. Sierra 11 did it again at 7:51 and 6 seconds, identical in every measurable way. By then, Cole wasn't watching an anomaly anymore. She was watching an architecture, a system in which every drone, in the last instant before it died, radioed its exact position, its final approach angle, and the precise timing of the shot that killed it, back to a controller sitting on bearing 064 and stitching those deaths into a live picture of the carrier's defensive coverage. A map. Built one destroyed drone at a time, drawn with the Abraham Lincoln's own intercepts as the pen. She called the Combat Information Center at 7:52. Position, approach angle, kill timing, all of it flowing home, she told the Tactical Action Officer, Lieutenant Commander Rachel Webb. This isn't an attack, it's reconnaissance, and there's a second wave coming that will be built entirely around whatever gaps that map finds. She asked for permission to start feeding false data into the burst transmissions before the picture was finished. Webb looked at her display. 43 tracks still inbound, solutions running clean, the engagement unfolding exactly like the 50 engagements before it, logged the assessment, and told Cole to stand by. The burst kept coming. Sierra 14 at 7:53, Sierra 19 at 7:56, Sierra 23 at 7:58 and 44 seconds. The whole Combat Information Center was working the problem with the settled confidence of a crew that had beaten every version of this attack for 49 straight days. The kind of quiet, careful optimism exhausted people allow themselves when they start to believe the worst might finally be over. Ceasefire talks were underway. The blockade was holding. 50 drones, loose and irregular, felt less like a real attack and more like the tired, degraded gesture of a military running out of better options, which was exactly the impression it had been built to create. Whoever was running this operation from the coastline had been watching that confidence grow for 2 weeks, watching the intervals between full alert cycles stretch out, watching the patrol pattern get a little more predictable every day as the crew wore down, and had shaped the first wave specifically to feel like something already beaten. Sierra 28 transmitted at 8:01, Sierra 33 at 8:04 and 17 seconds. Sierra 37 at 8:06. Call called again at 8:07. "The picture is 74% complete," she said. "I've got the controller's position fixed to within 40 meters and I have the frequency. I can corrupt the last 12 transmissions so the second wave gets flown at gaps that don't actually exist. I need the call now. Once Sierra 50 transmits, the map is finished and that wave is already airborne." Webb looked at 11 tracks left on the display, solutions still running clean, the end of the first wave visibly close, and told Cole the request had been escalated to Rear Admiral Carver. "Stand by." Sierra 41 transmitted at 8:08, Sierra 44 at 8:09 and 52 seconds. 6 drones left before the map was whole, and Cole didn't wait for a third answer. Waiting, she'd already decided, was indistinguishable from doing nothing, and doing nothing meant a finished map, an accurate second wave, and 150 drones flying straight through the exact seams in the carrier's defenses that nobody had patched. So at Sierra 45, she started altering the data herself, not jamming. Jamming would have told the controller station something was wrong, and they'd have simply thrown out the corrupted readings. Instead, she nudged each transmission just enough, shifting the reported approach angle by 4 to 7 degrees, sliding the intercept timing by roughly 1 2/10 to 2 4/10 of a second, small enough to clear whatever validation checks the other side was running, large enough to push the described gaps 300 to 500 meters from where they actually sat. Sierra 45 went out corrupted at 8:10 and 33 seconds, 46 at 8:11 and 8 seconds. 47, 48, 49 followed over the next 4 minutes, each one carrying a slightly false version of the Abraham Lincoln's defensive geometry back to a station that had no idea it was being lied to. Sierra 50 transmitted at 8:16 and 44 seconds and went down 1 1/10 seconds later. The first wave was gone. 50 tracks erased from the display, and the crew allowed itself that particular, hard-earned relief of watching the last hostile contact vanish. Down in the electronic warfare suite, Cole wasn't feeling relief at all. She'd corrupted 5 data points out of 50, 45 accurate, 5 wrong, and she had no way of knowing whether 5 out of 50 would be enough, or whether the 5 she'd touched even lined up with whatever corridors the second wave was actually going to fly. She'd done everything the clock allowed her to do. Now she just had to wait and find out, same as everyone else, which is its own kind of unbearable, doing the right thing on your own authority and then having no choice but to watch what it costs. At 8:19, the second wave launched. Not 50 this time, but 150, rising simultaneously from 3 separate sites on the coastline and fanning immediately into 6 approach corridors, each one calculated from the finished map to be the weakest seam in the carrier's intercept coverage. The exact combination of radar angle, escort position, and missile geometry that gave a drone the best odds of getting through. The Aegis system had never faced an attack shaped like this. Every earlier swarm had come from fixed bearings in coordinated pushes. This one arrived from 6 directions at once, each corridor hand-picked by the ship's own defensive responses. The outer layer stopped 61 of the 150. Plenty of those intercepts, ragged, late, lower percentage shots than anything the crew had run in 49 days of fighting, because 5 of the 6 corridors were slightly wrong. The 5 corrupted data points Cole had slipped in turned out, by a margin she would later call lucky rather than engineered, to touch 3 of those 6 corridors, shifting them 300 to 400 meters from where the controller thought they were. Drones flying those 3 corridors ran into defenses that weren't supposed to be waiting for them. The other 3 corridors, untouched, were accurate, and 41 drones flew straight through gaps exactly where the map said they'd be, with nothing in the outer layer able to answer for it. The middle layer, escorts Webb had repositioned in the 3 minutes between the 2 waves, stopped 22 more. Not a clean answer to an attack built around exactly where those escorts had been standing, but better than nothing, and Webb had used her 3 minutes well. 19 drones reached the inner perimeter. The Phalanx close-in defense system engaged all 19 and killed 16 of them. The last 3 came in on burst patterns too erratic and too compressed for a single targeting radar to keep up with 3 simultaneous demands. 2 of the 3 detonated against the carrier's hull above the waterline. The warheads were small, 40 kilograms of explosive, a fraction of what a real missile carries, but 2 hits that close together against the island structure were not nothing. The first blast tore open the exterior plating across a 6-meter section. The second went off 0.4 of a second later against that same weakened section and punched straight through where the first had already broken it open. 14 crew members were hurt. 1 Spy-6 radar array was damaged. A fire started in a communications space on the island's 3rd level and was out in 8 minutes and 17 seconds. The 3rd drone missed entirely. Its guidance had been fed one of the 5 corrupted readings, and it went looking for a ship that, according to its own data, was 380 meters from where the Abraham Lincoln actually sat. It hit open water at 8:23 and 14 seconds. 2 hits, 14 injured, 1 radar array down. Out of 150 drones purpose-built to use the carrier's own defensive replies as a targeting system against it. Back in the Combat Information Center, Webb read the damage report and called down to Cole. "Walk me through what you did," she said. Cole explained it plainly. The altered angles, the shifted timing, small enough to pass, large enough to move 3 of 6 corridors by 300 to 400 meters. "You did that without authorization," Webb said. "Yes, ma'am," Cole answered. Sierra 45 was already transmitting while the request to the Admiral was still sitting in someone's inbox. Neither of them said much else for a while. It's worth sitting with that exchange for a second. A junior analyst making an irreversible call on her own judgment while the chain of command was still catching up and getting it right. Whether that's the system working or the system failing depends entirely on which version of the story you'd rather believe. The controller station on bearing 064 had been transmitting and receiving for 39 minutes straight, and by the time Sierra 50 went down, Cole had its position pinned to within 22 meters, the tightest targeting fix the ship's electronic warfare gear had produced in 49 days of fighting. Rear Admiral Carver authorized the strike at 8:31. 12 Tomahawk cruise missiles left the vertical launch cells at 8:33. And by 9:18, the controller station, the processing gear, the antennas, the targeting computers, and the 23 signals intelligence officers who had spent months turning 50 drone deaths into a weapon no longer existed. An E-2 Hawkeye had kept the 3 coastal launch sites fixed throughout the whole engagement. 6 more Tomahawks reached them at 9:22, and by 9:24, the storage bunkers, fueling gear, and launch infrastructure built up over weeks of watching the blockade were gone too. 3 months of design work, 49 days of patient observation, 150 drones engineered to turn the Abraham Lincoln's own defenses against itself, and the result was 2 hits and 14 injuries because a chief petty officer noticed something wrong on the third drone and refused to stop watching. Through 2 standbys and 1 escalation and 50 deaths, and the finished map and the second wave already climbing off the coast, and found 6 minutes to corrupt 5 lessons before the 50th drone could teach the last one. The frequency call identified and the burst pattern every mapping drone had used went out to every electronic warfare unit in the theater before the day was over. So the next version of this trick would be recognized before the first intercept even fired. Call's own log entry ran to 2 lines. They sent 50 drones to learn how we kill drones, and 150 to use what they learned. We corrupted 5 of the 50 lessons. It worked, mostly, and it's worth asking honestly what mostly is supposed to feel like. 14 people hurt, a radar array wrecked, a fire in the island, against an attack that was supposed to have no answer at all. Somewhere in that gap between total success and total failure is a version of courage that doesn't get a clean ending, just a smaller, survivable disaster instead of a catastrophic one. And a question that isn't really about naval tactics at all. Whether you'd have made the same call Cole did, twice told to wait, with the clock running out and nobody left to ask.